Okay, so in this lab, we're going to create a static website, and this lab is located in the NetC 3302 course. So it's actually your first lab. So let's just go ahead and get started. So if we go to the top of the instructions, okay, now I can use a text editor as well. I just copied and pasted the instructions into a text editor. So we're going to set up a static website, and we'll use Amazon S3 to set up a static website. And the lab takes about 30 minutes to complete. So what we'll do is we'll start the lab. And while we're waiting for the lab to start, I want to go over with you the concept of an endpoint or a VPC endpoint. So when you create a virtual private cloud, yes, your databases, and your EC2 instances are set up in your virtual private cloud. The objects or the services that you use, such as S3 buckets or Kinesis status streams, reside outside your VPC, but within inside the AWS region that you're working in. So the S3 bucket we would create is not in our VPC, it's actually in the Amazon region that's outside the VPC. Now, yeah, the bucket is still ours. Now, if we wanted to access the bucket, right? Now, since it's not in our VPC, without a VPC endpoint, we would have to go and I found a good example over the internet. It's probably best if I just show you the example here. But as you can see your VPC, and there's two instances and two separate availability zones. Now, if you wanted to access an S3 bucket from an EC2 instance, you would actually have to go through your internet gateway if it had a public IP. And if it only had a private IP, you would have to go through your NAT gateway to the internet and back into the AWS region to access that service. But a VPC endpoint simply allows you to communicate with that S3 bucket without ever leaving the AWS region that you're working in. And it uses what's called a private link connection. So endpoints are a way of connecting to our objects that we create in a cloud that are outside our VPC without having to go through the internet. So you could see the two examples, one without a endpoint, the other with an endpoint. So again, you would have to go through your internet gateway to the internet and back down into your object if you didn't have a VPC endpoint. But if you have a endpoint, and we'll have an endpoint host name. We'll go from our instance to the endpoint network interface to the object in the cloud without ever leaving the AWS region. Okay, so that's the difference in terms of communication with having a VPC endpoint and not having a VPC endpoint. Okay, so what we'll do is the lab should be ready to go. Yep, we got a green light for our AWS. We'll just go ahead and click on it. And the instructions shouldn't be too much. We will go ahead and get started, and we should be on task one. So we'll create a bucket, we'll configure it as a website. We'll go to the services menu, and we'll locate the storage category, and we'll choose S3. Now, again, there's several ways to access S3. If you recently visited, it's in a link here. You could search for it, or you can click on services and go to the storage link in the left navigation pane. Let's try that again. Click storage and click on S3. Okay. And from here, we'll go ahead and we'll select create bucket. Okay, so we'll open the bucket and we will we'll click on create a bucket. And as you can see, we got a general purpose bucket and we'll leave that as is. And for the step-by-step instructions, okay, we won't be using the user guide. You got to use the bucket restrictions and limitations that we discussed in last class. So again, has to be lowercase and the bucket name has to be unique. So you're going to have to type a unique bucket name. It could be NetC 3302 and your banner ID would make it unique. But you don't have to type it. You can make up a banner ID. I'll make up a banner ID. Okay, and then we'll go to the ACL section. And for now, we'll leave ACLs disabled. And we want to uncheck block all public block all public access. Okay, we want to allow public access to our bucket. And we'll want to enable static website hosting. Okay, we have to acknowledge that we're turning off the public access. And from here, we'll go ahead and create bucket. Click on our bucket. And we just have to hit refresh. Okay, you got to actually click on it. And from our bucket, we want to select properties and we want to double check the AWS region. It's in the US East 1 region. The bucket has an Amazon resource name. And we want to go to static website hosting. We want to click at it and we want to check enable and we want to host the static website. The index document will be index.html. We'll have to create one and upload it to the bucket. We'll leave the redirection rules off for now and we'll click Save Changes. Okay. So we go back to our instructions and we enabled index.html. We save the changes. And then we want to go back to the static website hosting section and we want to copy that endpoint. So again, we go all the way to the bottom and you'll have a bucket website endpoint. Okay, and so again, when you configure your bucket as a static website, the website is available at the AWS region specific website endpoint of the bucket. You won't have to go out to the internet. Okay, so we'll just click the bucket website endpoint and we'll go back to our instructions. And they'll probably want us to create the index.html file. So we'll go to the static website hosting. We've done that. And we'll use the endpoint to test the bucket. So we've got it copied. We could copy it to a text file here. We probably want to do that. Okay, so I got that copied to a text file. And somewhere along the lines, they're going to want us to create a bucket policy. Okay, so we're on task 2. So edit block public access settings. Okay. I think we've already done this, but let's double check it. We go to permissions and we have it off. Okay, if we go to our buckets list, the access for the bucket should display that objects can be public. Now you can add a bucket policy to make the objects in the bucket publicly readable. Okay? And if we run into issues with testing our website, more than likely it's going to be an issue with the script here. So we want to go to the bucket policy section and we're going to want to copy this. And so right underneath block public access, which we've turned off, we want to click edit for bucket policy. And that opens up our window. And then we want to paste in, I always paste in as plain text, the bucket policy, which is going to allow public access to our website. And so what we're going to do, we have to replace example bucket with the actual name of our bucket. So what you want to do is, you see where it says ARN, AWS S3, and S3 colons, and that's the same for all of us. After that, you want to highlight your bucket name. And if you recall, mine began with netc 3302. So I highlight that, I copy it, and I'm going to replace the example bucket, including the brackets. Okay, so it's kind of tricky, but you just got to be careful about it. If you got fat fingers like me, it certainly doesn't help. And I can do a Control V to paste that in there. Okay, so I replaced example bucket with the actual name of our bucket. And then from there, we want to choose Save Changes. Okay, so I'm double checking that script and it looks good to me. So we'll select Save Changes. And you successfully edit the bucket policy. And we'll go to the buckets list. Click on our netc 3302. And we can click on properties. We can double check the region. Okay, bucket versioning. Now, if you had a file, if you were using your bucket to set up file storage, again, then versioning would allow you to upload multiple copies of a file without one file replacing the other file. So, and that's real helpful if you need files for historical purposes. And I think I gave an example in the previous class. If you were uploading operating system versions, that can be pretty important to have versioning enabled, because if, and it's happened before in the real world, you install a new operating system and some of the services don't work, right? And that can bring your network down. So in some cases, what you have to do is restore the previous operating system. And so that's where versioning comes into play, like Windows 10 versus Windows 11, right? And and those are just examples, or just historical files. Versioning can be real important as well. Okay. Okay, so we're set for static website hosting. It's enabled. We've already copied our bucket endpoint. If you go to permissions, okay, the block all public IP access is off. Okay. And so if you go to the bucket policy again, the name of your bucket should be under the resource, replacing example.bucket. And then finally, we want to go back to our objects tab, okay? Because we got some files we want to upload, right? And so we'll probably have to next create our index.html file. So here we go. We're going to use a text editor to create a simple file and save it as an index.html. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is go out to the internet, and you can go to google.com, and we'll download 2 pictures, okay? So, and you got spring, summer, winter, fall. So if I type spring and I go to images, okay, there's a picture of spring. And sometimes it's hard to find a JPEG image nowadays. Here it is. So I can right click, I can go save as. See how it says web page complete? Spring JPEG image. Here we go. Save image as, and right, you got a JPEG image. Now you want to keep simple file names. So I'm just going to type 1, save it to my downloads folder, and download one more image. Just want to click on it. Save image as. There's another JPEG image. Just save it as 2. And we'll just do one more. Get a smaller one here. Okay, and save image as. And again, it could be anything. Just save them as JPEG images and save them to your downloads. Doesn't matter what the pictures are. But if you just keep simple file names like 1, 2, or 3, it'll be easier to do the lab. Okay, so I've saved 3 images in my downloads folder. And then what I'm going to do is open up another Notepad document. Go new tab, and I'm going to copy it's missing actually a tag, but that's okay. We'll add it in there. Okay, so we'll just highlight all this. Actually, just stop here. Start with the heading in brackets and ending with /HTML. Click a new tab in your text editor. We'll paste that in there. We need to add a tag. So at the beginning of the first tag, hit enter twice. And I'm going to type inside of a tag, Control Z. What happened there? Here we go. So you got to hold the shift key down, and next to the M on your keyboard, you type HTML. Okay. And so you could put a title for your website. I'll just type beautiful spring photos. Okay, I'm not creative as some of you might be. And you got a background color. You could actually reverse this. You could type a different background color. You could type a background color of blue with white text. Okay, and from there, you got a heading, which is the main title of your website, and it could be Spring Desktop. Now, some people offer wallpapers for your laptop, and they offer them free for download. So you could type free Spring Desktop wallpapers. Okay, and there's some errors in this script, so we're going to add a paragraph here. So we're going to make a bracket and type a P. And you could replace this as my first web page with something that's related to the script. So a /P closes the paragraph. And I'll just type feel free to download any of my wallpapers. Something like that. Okay, you close the body, but before we do that, after the paragraph, then we want to insert our pictures. And if you want to center them, you could type a tag. You don't have to center them, but you could type center, hit enter, and then type a tag, img space src equals, and then in quotes is the file name of your picture. It should be JPG, followed by a closing tag. Now, is it JPEG or JPG? So I just go back to my download folder, and if I right click, oh, here they are, one. So if I right click on one, they're JPG files. Okay, and so I got JPG, hit enter, and type a tag, img space src. Okay, it really means image insert. Okay, equals, and then put a quotation, type 2.jpg, end quote, closing tag, and then make your final tag, img space src equals, quote, 3.jpg, closing tag, and then you could turn off the center function with a /center. So if you were at a second paragraph, that paragraph wouldn't be centered, right? And so I'll just keep a lot of this double space. They'll be easier to see. You don't have to double space. Everything could be single spaced. Okay. And we'll delete this. Okay, so that will be your HTML file right here. So you got the title. Normally in HTML, when you turn something on, you always turn it off, right? So this kind of signifies the browser actually reads this, right? And so your browser says, okay, this is the beginning of the HTML document and this is the end, right? And so you have a body, right? And it signifies the beginning of the body, the end of the body. Title, beginning of the title, which appears in your browser bar, right? In the end of the title. And then you specify your body, your background color, and your text color. H1 is like a main title for your web page that appears in large font. And that title, that is Free Spring Desktop Wallpapers. I got an equal sign in there by mistake. So take that equal sign off. And then you got a paragraph that says, feel free to download any of my wallpapers. This is the end of the paragraph. And then you start centering the three images, right? And then you turn off the centering and you turn off the body and the end of the HTML document. And then you could save this. You can go save as, okay, and you go to your downloads folder and it will be index.html, okay, and you just give it a file name index.html and hit save. Okay, now I can close this tab, okay, we have to upload the objects, okay, before we can test the website. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our lab. Oh, here it is. Okay. And we'll click the upload for the objects. You can drag, but I always find it easier to click this add files here. And I go to my downloads. Okay, and I got my index.html. I'm going to copy that, copy pictures 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to click open. And then I'm going to select upload. And they all should have succeeded. Okay. And then I can close this window here. Okay, and underneath objects, I got my files. I'm going to click properties tab and scroll down to the bottom and copy that endpoint again. Okay, and then let's go to our lab instructions. We'll test the website with the name of your bucket and region. So they kind of wanted for you to do it manually. Okay, and we can do that manually. So you can copy your bucket name. I'll show you how to do that. Your bucket name. We click on buckets. Here's our bucket name, right? And highlight it. Go copy. And replace that with example bucket. Click paste. Okay, so it should read netc3302 dash followed by your fake banner ID dot s3 dot website, and we want to replace it with our actual region. So to verify what region we're in the North Virginia region, which is US East 1. It's taking a while to load the regions, for example. Here, let's just go here. No, this is it. There it is. Took a while for it to pop up, but US East, North Virginia is US-East-1. So that's what we want to specify for our region. So we place region with US-East-1.AmazonAWS.com. So you could take all of that. Trying to get this copied here. Here we go. Try it again. Okay, I right click, I go copy. Okay. And then we're going to enter that in a new browser tab. And we're going to paste and go. And there it is, right? And the pictures were big. And like you can resize pictures. But there's the website, free spring desktop wallpapers. And then you have your paragraph and the 3 pictures that are centered. Okay. So that pretty much completes the lab. Okay. So what you did was, if you run into errors, double check your bucket policy. Like if that website doesn't load, more likely than not, it's your bucket policy. So again, you have to replace example bucket with the name of your bucket, which is, where is it? I thought it was just there. Okay, let me click on buckets again. So here's the name of my bucket, right? And so you could just highlight that, right? And replace it with example.bucket. Okay, so that's one thing to check. And check the brackets, okay? Make sure all the brackets are there and all the indentation is there as well, okay? And that's why when you put things on a text document and you copy it from a text document, it doesn't mess around with the formatting. And so when you're working with AWS Labs, anything that involves in a script and they tell you to copy it to a text document, okay? So if your website doesn't load, check that, okay? So what you'll want to do for the successful lab completion is after task 4, when you upload your index.html document and your 3 pictures, take a screenshot of that and then take a screenshot of your website and submit those 2 screenshots as part of the assignment requirements. Okay, so this concludes the lab and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.